Welcome to the epicenter of sports and entertainment. This is The Rude Dog Show. Now, here's your host, Rudy Reyes.
Welcome to The Rude Dog Show. Good evening, everybody from the Central Valley, California. Happy St. Patty's Day, or is it St. Patrick's Day? I don't really care. If you have green on, you're probably safe from the pinches and bruises and bumps and maybe prevent an accident. All rolled up in the one as you're driving home. You may not be listening to this, but hopefully if you are, you're in your car and you're safe and it's all Bluetooth and you're good to go. So with that, this is Rudy Reyes of TheRudeDogShow.com, live on Today's California, live on Today's Canada, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I'm almost run out of breath thinking of all the places that I'm on right now. And of course, my wonderful partners who are involved in all of this, making this all really, really possible, is trophycase.app. Make sure you download it. And if you do have a profile, all you youngins out there, make sure, I just dated myself, make sure that you have your profile built. If you have a reel, if it's a huddle film, put it up. If you have photos with you and someone else on a football field, or maybe you scoring a game-winning touchdown, put it up. Profile photos are great. It's always a great way to build it because you never know who is looking. If you're not in it to win it, you're going to lose out without it. Go to trophycase.app and, of course, SaturdaysCount.com. Grab your shirts of your alma mater. And, of course, yes, it only applies to football because there are only so many Saturdays in an NCAA football season. As you know, NCAA March Madness is taking its place, at least for right now, until football season. Either way, go grab your shirt because tomorrow is Saturday and make Saturdays count. Go to SaturdaysCount.com and get your free shirt. Well, not free shirt, but get your shirt today. May get a little bit of a discount if you throw my name in there. I don't know if that will help or if it'll raise the price. I'm not sure. But go to SaturdaysCount.com. This is Rudy Reyes. And, of course, you don't know the young lady here to my right, maybe your left, depending on the configuration. But this is Danielle Martin. She is the one, the only of TrueMindsets.com. We're going to dive into what that actually means and how that's applicable to athletes throughout the country. But more importantly, there's been a lot of issues, and I say this from a behavioral standpoint because issues come in all shapes and sizes. They come in all formats. And when I say that, I mean that anybody could have them. It doesn't matter who you are. If you have millions or if you have millions of pieces of lint in your pocket, it still could apply to you. So beware. This episode is going to be very informative, very impactful. So, glue yourself into your seat for at least 20 or 30 minutes while Danielle and I discuss this matter. We're going to take this very seriously. I take it very seriously. Welcome, Danielle Martin, to the show. I know you take this seriously, too.
Hi. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Almost a short notice, but nevertheless, in short notice or short time, you are here. So thank you for that. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to discuss some of the things. And, we're human beings. We all have issues. We are all a work in progress. So have no fear.
Yeah, there's a lot of places that actually have no fear. Maybe that's part of their slogan. Speaking of no fear, I know that when we look at the no fear aspect, and of course, you could always make that applicable to just do it, and albeit Nike. I think Nike's probably having a big PR issue right now between guys like Kyrie Irving, John Morant, in relation to their on-court and off-court behaviors. More so, I think John Morant makes this more applicable than any other athlete, at least at this current time. And I say that because of the types of situations that he has put himself in. And of course, you can go back as far as to say his environment created it. You can make excuses to say that maybe he didn't know the difference between right or wrong. You can say that the rap music he was listening to compelled him to do this. You can make whatever excuse you want to make. But the bottom line is that if I know what's difference between right and wrong, and I come from an environment where I was running for my life every day I left off the bus from school because I knew that if I didn't run as fast as lightning, I'd have people chasing me down and I'd have bigger issues and bigger fish to fry. when I think of this, Danielle, and I think of John Morant, and I think of his ongoing situation, there's a lot of claims, there's a lot of misinformation being thrown around, which I think basically it's a misnomer, right? Because we look at John Morant, we look at his situation. If you are just looking at this from the outside without any investigative research whatsoever, and you're looking at John Morant's personality, how he grew up, the types of things you're hearing about him in the news, what would be your overall synopsis as to what could be the systemic issue and why he's acted out in this manner?
There's a lot of ways that could be answered and judgments that could be taken. But really, we're all human beings. We all fall down and we're not all defined by, and we shouldn't be defined by how we fall down, but we should be defined by how we choose to get up. We talked about this before too, Rudy. And, I think that coming into where you come from, if you allow it to define you, if you are walking around with that victim mentality of, I'm this way because this happened to me, that's a choice. I think a lot of us don't always come from perfect childhoods, perfect parents, families, environments. A lot of people have adversity, and adversity can bring out, you can either settle and become a victim and say, I'm this way because of all these things and give excuses. But when you have your health and you have opportunities like what he's had, and you're stepping into a professional environment, you also have to make the choice to take on that responsibility. And I think that a lot of times these guys get maybe too much money too fast, but I always like to think that money makes some of these people more of what they already are. So if they're really good people, their goodness is gonna shine even more, including their performance. The off the field type of behaviors, it's unfortunate when you have people falling down, getting up, falling down, choosing not to get up, and feeling like they're maybe above the law or above a certain level of responsibility or behavior, because there's a lot of kids looking at you. You're on a big platform of sports, and sports is something that's very compelling across the world. People are watching you, and there's goods and bads to that. But at the end of the day, when you when you're taking on these opportunities and you have that, gratitude is a big one. And a lot of times these guys, I've seen athletes go in and lose jobs at the big league levels because of being bad teammates or being irresponsible or making poor choices. And, sometimes they have to fall and get dropped on their head a few times before they realize, oh my gosh, what have I done? What have I compromised? What have I lost? A lot of times when those guys are in those positions, they're not thinking about all the things that we're talking about. They're not thinking about the consequences, because when they're in those moments and they're getting paid big sums of money, they're not thinking about what if this goes away. It almost is like this is just how it's going to be, and it's going to be this way forever. But that's why you see across sports, there's a lot of athletes, 75% of athletes are bankrupt 4 years after they're done playing, because they're making poor decisions, because they're taking opportunity for granted. And there's a lack of gratitude. There's a lack of appreciation. And sometimes their entitlement to, well, I got myself here, and they feel like they're entitled because they made it somewhere through possible adversity, through, abuse or whatever it is. But then they get there and they're not making the choice to take what they've now earned and fought so hard for, and got to this place and be better. They're gonna go and recreate the same patterns that they have, maybe generationally, maybe situationally, from where they came from. And, sports, football, baseball, all the sports across the way have their ways of dealing with these athletes. And, athletes that have their 5 minutes, this is a really great way to really make sure it's 5 minutes, because money or not money, sports are having less and less tolerance for this type of thing. And, sometimes there's mental issues, mental health issues, but sometimes it is just a choice. I've had agents call me, athletes come across my way, and, I can tell right away an athlete that wants to be better, wants to be vulnerable to that process of getting better, and the courage and strength it takes to go into those maybe adverse, dark rabbit holes from the past, from childhood, from whatever might be kind of brewing in them to compel them, or to not support them in making better decisions. And I can tell right away when they want to do that versus, Yeah. I'm only talking to you because I was told to, and I'm just doing it. And I really don't think I have a problem. So you see it all over the place. It's unfortunate because kids are watching, and you always kind of sit back because when these athletes get away with it, kids are like, oh, well, he got away with it. Or you see athletes doing drugs and then they're back on the field, or, assaulting family members, girlfriends, wives, boyfriends, friends, whatever. And then they're back on the field, or they're getting another opportunity. It's a really bad message, to be honest, but these types of things don't discriminate. Lots and lots of money makes people do crazy things. Everybody wants a lot of money, but they're maybe not ready for the responsibility that comes with that, the attention that comes with being a pro athlete. People deal with it all differently. So having that organization or the mentors around you, or for me, I pace along with my athletes during the season, helping them to organize that on field, off field. That's why I call my business is Mental Skills Performance, because it's not just the conversations, it's about bringing them to action and getting the brain to really hone in on the job at hand and to remember that it is a job. You're being paid to do a job. And all the outskirt stuff really can distract and confuse them, and pull them away from what matters at that moment. And it's not just them, it's the people the people we surround ourselves with has a lot to do with our success, and also us being able to sustain that level of success, because it's about sustainability. And sports are not paying for inconsistency, they're paying for consistency. And there's a way to go into your sport and to keep it sustainable, be consistent, be organized, be resilient, bring in energy, and all those things. And people underestimate what it takes to stay there, not just get there.
There's so many different processes as a part of being a young NBA player, young NFL player, young Major League Baseball star. The list goes on and on and on. So many of these guys get put in a position of power. When I say power,
Mm-hmm.
I mean a monetary power, almost a
Mm-hmm.
level up. And look, I recognize that, and everybody has their own story. I've spoken to guys like Mike Ditka of the Chicago Bears, 85 Bears, who won a championship. He arrived where he did because of his hard work, because of his dedication, because of his determination to understand the game, learn the game. He played at Pitt. There's a lot of different athletes who had to learn from the school of hard knocks and have made
Mm-hmm.
mistakes along the way. Uh, Today, because of the social media landscape and the types of avenues and directions that, again, all about misinformation, being misinformed, uh,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that perhaps the best thing you can do is lay low and retract, especially if you're seeing negative commentary, if you're seeing negative views, if you're being looked at in a less than stellar light and you're on the news. It's either good news or bad news. Those are the only two reasons why you're on TV or in any discussion. Not keeping your nose down and nose to the grindstone. You have to go back and go retroactively and think to yourself, how did I get to this point? Yeah, I put the hard work in. I put the time on the court. I put the time in the classroom. I stuck my nose to the grindstone. Well, that right there is kind of the obligatory component of it all, is because if you don't go back to where and how and the processes that allowed for you to get to where you're at right now, then you're really missing the boat. And you're going to continue making these errors. You're going to continue making errors of judgment. And those that are around you wanting to jump onto the bandwagon because you made it this far, whether it's family or friends or both. The entertainers go through this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So many times, more often than not, they don't learn the lessons of people knocking at their door looking for a handout, albeit family or friends, and
Mm-hmm.
and they get caught up in that dynamic where they know that they're the go-to. They know where they came from. This person was up there with them when they got drafted, or whatever the case might be. If you can't understand that your nose went to the grindstone to get to where you're at right now, to say, you know what, I need to correct these issues. I need to correct these problems. I need to correct these behaviors. If I have people around me condoning these behaviors, perhaps they're not the ones who achieved greatness and where I'm at right now.
A
Otherwise, he
lot
could
of
find
times,
himself like anybody else in a situation where Now they find themselves bankrupt, as you stated, after the first 4 years of exiting their, professional careers. I think John Morant has either recognized, or maybe from an immature standpoint, I always thought Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks was obviously a little bit and still very immature. And I don't mean that to the effect of it's affecting his game. No, but the immaturity comes from the body reactions, the fighting on the courts you see more so often, especially in the NBA. Leave that in the MMA. Just leave it in the MMA.
Yeah, but a lot
there
of
are
these
times in
guys
the
have
NFL where you get into fights as well. I understand all of that, but
sports are
again,
emotional though. Sports are emotional, and I think that as you grow and things, there's different times that you're going to be dealing with past things. They're going to come up, and sometimes when these guys have a firewall or this unresolved anger within themselves, you're going to see those players that just are very resistant to deal with some of those things because they don't have a safe space to deal with it, or they don't have someone that they've connected with that they feel good about going in there and dealing with it, all the while still performing. I think too, mental skills and that type of thing is such a, there's a stigma attached to it. Like, I've got to have something wrong to go talk to somebody, but really, like, it's not just about that, but it's about keeping things going right. I really don't believe any of these athletes, when you talk about all that hard work to get to where they went, I don't think they set out to abuse their power or set out to fall down flat on their face and have that judgment or pour their name in the media in a negative way. But I think once it happens, sometimes they're like, well, this is what they're already saying about me, so F it, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And that the strength in their personality that contributed to them getting to where they're going starts to become their worst enemy. And typically athletes, when I'm dealing with them, and these really super talented athletes are having a hard time in what they do, they're in their own way, but they get in their own way off the court too, off the field too. And it's just a matter of me meeting them where they are and figuring out what's going on. Where are their highs? Where are their lows? And do they have like some of this repressed anger and stored up anger that they haven't ever had tools to know how to deal with that? And so anybody can come from a really great childhood. They can be trust fund kids and never had been hungry in their life, or you can have the guy who's been physically hungry or beaten or whatever. But we all have a choice at a certain point. And when we're given opportunity, we have a choice how we're going to capitalize on that and what we're going to do with it once we have it. And like I said, when gratitude is not present, you're going to have some problems inside to the out. When your expectations are higher than your standards, you're going to have a problem inside to the out. These people are lacking happiness, and it becomes really lonely when you do have millions of dollars and people are sitting outside thinking your life's perfect, and really you have this unresolved, hot mess going on inside, and you have to go out every single night and perform under the pressures of these organizations, of these coaches. There's a ton of insecurity in sports. There's a ton of jealousy in sports from the inside. I mean, from the outside coming in and the inside in those environments, and it's just having compassion and giving grace to yourself. It takes us a long time to grow up sometimes. Everybody grows up at different times. And that's why I always say you never know what someone else is going through. So be kind, have compassion, don't judge, but there does a couple of time where people are not ever finding that gratitude piece, and they're looking at their opportunities like, I'm making 220 mil. I don't really care. I'm going to do it my way. And that's very selfish. There's an aspect of selfish. We have to be selfish, and we have to make sure we show up with our very best self to our team and where we're going and what we need to do for that job. But there's sometimes this other selfishness where it's like the whole team, and then there's this one guy who's bringing bad press to the team, not showing up with his best self to the team, not producing like he possibly could for the team because he feels entitled that his job's just going to always be there no matter what. And those guys get rude awakenings, and I'm telling you now, those guys fall flat on their face, and then they want to fix it. And sometimes you've burned too many bridges. Sports, as many teams as there is out there, is a very small community, and word gets around that you're this or you're that, and people start shutting doors on your face no matter what you can do, because guess what? There's always someone to beat you. There's always somebody who's going to come around and do it better than you at some point, or do the job good enough that doesn't disrupt the peace of the rest of the team. So it's a fine line, and I encourage those athletes to be grateful. Be grateful, but express gratitude. Gratitude is the action of being grateful. Gratitude, science says when gratitude's present, anxiety cannot be present. So if you're anxious, if you're coming in and you're dealing with all these things, stop. Take some deep breaths. Deep breaths like inhale, double your exhale, shift your nervous system to that relaxed mode, and start to really step out of your own way and start to look at the fact that we are human beings. We're not robots. Athletes are not robots. There shouldn't be the expectation every single day because he's making this amount of money. There's really a lot of sides to this to look at. I'm not one, especially with my clients, to create excuses and let them live there. They come to me to be honest. I'm honest. They come to me I meet them where they are, and we start unraveling the mess that is getting in their way of doing their job. And inevitably, the tools that you have and that you get to go be your best self in your sport and doing your job are tools that you're going to keep with you the rest of your life that inevitably make you a better person. I'm a big believer that better people make better athletes, and better athletes are what make better teams. So, and people are happier. People deserve to be happy. Being a pro athlete is no easy task. Our lives and their lives are not perfect. It's not always what people think.
It's definitely harder than it looks. It's harder than it seems. And what's going to be harder is getting out of the denial stage that there is a problem. It's almost as if, you're and this goes back to what you had mentioned earlier, and I want to capitalize on that. You had stated that people get in their own way. I've been saying that for years. If you get in your own way, you're not going to recognize that A, you have a problem, B, there needs to be a solution, and to see your way out of that solution and turning things around to get
but
you to
really quick,
where
Rudy,
you need to be as to why you are now I'm not going to say overpaid athlete, but you're paying very well for those services rendered. Another thing you had mentioned, and to go over something that I just kind of noted in regards to John Morant, I think there is a little bit of a denial factor in this. He had interviewed with Jalen Rose on ESPN. He stated that most of the issues that have been reported about him are a lie. Now, that sends a signal of deniability to me. And I think that when you look at the self-inflicted wound of continually denying that there's an issue, that stems from immaturity. That stems
and
from
entitlement, and like, hey, I really don't know. It's a lie. It's just deflecting. It's taking that victim mentality. But also, I will say this, not in the way you're saying it, but deniability. There are athletes out there that are afraid to admit an issue because their contracts get decided on that, or organization like, oh, what's going on with them right now? Oh, well, maybe we shouldn't do this, or playing time. They have to put on a face. They feel that way. They feel like it's, I always tell athletes, it's okay not to be okay because you're human. Remember, you're a human, but they don't get treated like that. They get treated like robots in their environments a lot of the time. And it's not okay not to be okay. You have to be okay. There is an expectation to be okay. So that deniability is different than inevitably the one that you're kind of mentioning in this case with John Moran.
Yeah, no, I think that he's going to have a hard lesson to learn, and I'm not saying that he was never going to learn it. I am not negative in that way. He will find a way out of this, but it goes back to the whole adage of if there's a will, there's a way. I don't want to sound redundant. I don't want to sound like a cliche, but if you can find the will to recognize that there's a problem, there's a way out of that. There's a way through that. There's a way to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Another old, outdated euphemism, but still very relevant, especially in his instance. He's not even 22 years old. So he has time for correction. He has time to undo this. And of course, the Grizzlies PR is doing everything they can to give as much, I'm not going to say lack of information, but they're giving as much as they feel they need to say in regards to John Morant. But what I find really actually even more interesting is that he was already away from the team. So there was an additional 3 or 4 days, I believe, was away from the team, and now suspended for 8 in its entirety. I think they went about it a little bit backwards, because if you're going to take, it's almost like in the NFL where you get on the commissioner's exempt list. If you're on his exempt list, you're in some deep deep doo-doo. You got, clean your shoes off, leave them at the door, come in. It's a clean slate. We're going to have discussions. There may be a fine, maybe a penalty. There may be some time off you're going to take, but it's a little backwards in the NBA in this instance, maybe not in others, but in this one. Grizzlies are trying to do everything they can to salvage this PR nightmare. But at the end of the day, it's really about Ja Morant and getting him recognize that there's a problem, and in turn creating a solution for this problem.
There's not a lot of preventative tools and actions and investment into helping players avoid these situations. But I got to tell you, they spend millions to clean it up. And I always am like, there are ways to go in and start giving players tools before it gets to this point. But everybody walks on eggshells around it and they don't want to address it. But when these types of things happen and you talk to these people, they're like, I didn't know, or I knew it wasn't right, or this wasn't right, but they never said anything. They've done nothing to help us avoid certain situations. And, I've dealt with some of these big entities before, talking to them about coming in and talking to players or whatever. And they're so concerned with how much is this, how much is that. But when things do happen, you're spending millions, just so you know that. And they'd rather do that. They'd rather do that. I'm convinced they are not there to make these athletes better people. These are big, giant, vicious organizations, corporations, and they want production. They want W's. They want to win. It's a business. And if you're not doing something to contribute to them winning, they'll squeeze you out. And in these contracts, the guaranteed contracts, the things that are going on with the money and everything else, it's kind of like its own little world of politics and pressure. And it's sad because it's not like they're out there trying to do anything to get behind to make better people. But it just shows these athletes too that, and everybody in the world, we all have purpose. We're all human beings with a purpose, and it's up to us to do the things that we can to contribute to whatever that purpose is. And usually I always say, the more we give, the more we get. But the more attention, the more self-care, the more things that we give, the more we're going to get. Influence, knowledge, education, tools. When we're paying attention, for me, I always have that student mentality. I'm always out there to learn. I'm always out there trying to be better. Sports in my life, as a pro athlete and athlete, have not defined me. They've only motivated me to want to be that much better, because one day you're not competing, and one day you got to say goodbye to that piece, and it's difficult. So it's important to have an identity outside of being a basketball player or a football player or a baseball player or any athlete, rugby player, because one day that's going to go away. And you think these athletes are having meltdowns or acting out behaviors while they're playing, you should see on the far end when they're not. And so, being able to treat these people more like human beings and not just like these, robots, and we slap an expectation on there. I've heard people say, why is he striking out so much? How does he strike out when he's getting paid this? It's like the two have nothing to go, the two have nothing to do with each other. But this is people's mentality on the outside. Like, it should just happen. That expectation happens on the inside too. So these athletes, they all have breaking points. We as humans all have breaking points, whether you're working at a bank, whether you're working at a restaurant, or whether you're doing that. Obviously the pay is a little different.
Yeah,
but
a little bit.
It is. And it does different things to different people. They do have the freedom of choice on who they want to be. Effort and attitude. Those are the two things we control no matter what. In sports, you step on that court and there's a ton of things you don't control that can happen to you. If you can go out there and you have a pretty good, organized shelf of tools of how I react to these things, and I've already discussed it, gone over it, I've prepared for it, I've anticipated it. If you're a baseball player and you try to think you're never going to fail with the statistics of failure that live in the game of baseball, then you're delusional. It's going to happen. So prepare for it. How are you going to react to it? How are you going to react in life when you're done one day? How will you react if you're working your way up and you actually sign a contract for $50 million? These are the things that they don't prepare these young kids for. And a lot of times now, look at the money in sports. Look at the money in baseball. Look what just
Ridiculous.
Even the Padres are doing.
Yeah.
The Padres, they're
insane.
giving 22, 23-year-olds $300 million. And then they're like, why are they showing up late? Where's their incentive? Where they freeze. People are like, oh, it must be so rough. Well, you don't know what this person's going through. You don't know what lens they're viewing their own life in.
Right.
So, I feel like I'm on the front lines a lot of the time with a lot of these things. I don't condone, I'm not like, oh yeah, this guy beat this woman, and I like the Trevor Bauer thing. He just got a job. He got picked up in Japan. Like, just because he wasn't convicted of doing what he did do what he did. So, everybody's like, well, he wasn't convicted. Like, I'm sorry, I don't excuse that. I don't. There's nothing I can say to you to excuse that. And there's just some things are just like, you know what, you need to go grow up and good luck. But there's a lot of different sides to a lot of these situations. I don't try to judge. I try to, if an athlete comes to me, I try to meet them where they are. And if they're in a dark, deep rabbit hole, then I go right there and we walk out of that. And, I've seen people transform. I've seen guys that were really great teammates, and I've seen guys that were really not, and then transform themselves. But it wasn't me who told them to. It was them that made that decision, or got sick of the way they were feeling, or being treated finally, because they were getting treated how they were treating other people. But they were getting treated like that by the big muscle of the organization, an NFL, an NBA, an MLB. And you realize, as big as they are, like I said before, they're small little worlds of their own, and word gets around.
Yeah, it definitely gets around. And the worst aspect to all this is that all that money, all those contracts, all of the you have your Nikes and your Adidas's and your Pumas and all these endorsements from all these major companies, Foot Locker, Champs. The list goes on and on and on. That affects them, and when it gives them a bad name, a bad label because of the association factor, they tend to pull the plug. And I don't blame them at all in any shape or form to say, you know what, well, it's been great, but this is where we're at because you chose to X, Y, and Z and ABC. I'm more focused on the solution for any player. And of course, the reflecting component of that is the team that drafts these guys. Now, I'm not going to squarely blame it on them, say, well, you're the one who got a bad player. Okay,
no.
maybe not. But what they should do prior to this, and again, something I preach to the choir for years, every single team, regardless of the sport, needs to have a comprehensive exam for these guys and give them a personality test and or psychological evaluation. Mm-hmm. I don't mean something hardcore where you're going to bring in someone with a white jacket and say, this is for your own good. No, we're investing in you. You're performing for us, but as long as you're wearing that jersey in whatever color capacity that is, you're representing us. And you're reflecting of us. So unless you pass this test or exam, unfortunately, regardless of how good you are, we don't want the bad PR that we're going to have to try to make things right in front of the national media, your ESPNs and your CNNs and your ABCs. We don't want to go through all of that. So if they don't pass, they don't play. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree.
That?
And I think there's an aspect of that too, but in the world we live in right now, it's going to be all about you're discriminating against me, and they're going to pick and choose whatever they feel like saying in those moments. So, and I also think like personality tests, people can pass those. There's no guarantees, and you're dealing with really young kids a lot of the time in their 20s, and they're already in that hormonal crazy phase. And these people are going to hone in on talent, and they're going to say you either have it or you don't. And a lot of times these younger ones that they're spending this money on, they're projecting these guys. So what they're producing now is one piece, but what they're projecting them to be able to do is a whole nother when they're doing these long-term contracts.
Correct.
So projectability, talent, I think they look at that first and they're like, what kind of person is this? What do they look like when they fail? What's this? What's that? But I don't think there's any guarantees regardless, but I think the team setting up a boundary and a precedence, maybe outs in their contracts so that those players know, hey, if I do this, this is a consequence. And that's where I think you can get into more of that preventative style of prevention and solution, because now it's like, we know there's a law, right? I know that if I go out and I steal a car or I hurt someone, I know I can be arrested. I know I can go to jail. We know the consequences. These guys are coming in and they're everything's now changing to influence, right? So now these organizations are looking at them going, we don't want the negative influence, like you mentioned earlier. We don't want the negative publicity. We don't want that. but there's no consequence. And then after, they're playing this cleanup game with actually no solution because, well, we can't fire him. Or baseball, we have guaranteed money. What are we going to do? We'll send him home for however long and we'll pay his contract. It's like everybody looks at that and goes, where's the consequence there? He's getting some days off. He's doing whatever he wants. He's out partying on your dime. So how is that a consequence? I think they need to set up some type of hard barrier boundary consequence that says, there is a responsibility to signing this contract aside of scoring for us or, hitting home runs for us or making baskets for us. We care about the kind of person you are, and we're having you sign this, and there's a responsibility to that. And if you disrespect that responsibility or yourself or someone else within this contract, then you're out. We have the option to make the decision at the upper level. You're out. It's not discrimination. There is no coming back after us for whatever your opinions or whatever
Correct.
people say. It's a done deal. We're setting our own standard here that says, if you do this, this will happen, period. No, nothing around it. If that athlete then goes and sits down and signs it with his attorneys, agents, and everybody else, and everybody knows, now you've just taken an organization and you've raised the standard. And now if we have all the teams doing that, now we've raised the standard in MLS or rugby or NBA. When one entity actually does that and takes a hard line and says, we have no tolerance. You put your hands on a woman and it goes to the media and it's this and it's that, you're out of here. We don't have room for that. We don't want that influence on all our fans and the young fans and the upcoming athletes.
Absolutely.
It's not okay here. So when you do that ahead of time, now, Rudy, there's your solution, because now you have athletes going, I knew what the problem was. Now they're really learning a lesson. You get fired with no pay. Now your baseball guaranteed money, it's not guaranteed. This is the one piece of the contract that if you don't respect,
It's a clause.
you're done.
It's a definite clause. And you know what?
That's a solution
General
to me.
managers, I am on board 110,000% on that, because 99.99% of the time, a lot of these guys will get a free pass because they're so great on the field. We
100%.
miss them here in the dugout. We miss them here on the sidelines. We miss them inside of the locker room. There's such this person and that person during this game or that game or this playoff. There's such a key component to our offense or defense. It shouldn't be that way. It should be where they recognize and understand that even though they're as good as they are at this respective sport that they play, that the organization is going to take a very hard, firm, and solidified stance and not let you play, not allow for you to play, and wash their hands of it. I love the clause in the contracts. I think that would be great. I think it'd be fundamentally sound. But I believe there has to have some type of almost a system within that framework, meaning that if you were like Trevor Bauer for the Dodgers, right? Whether if his wife had enjoyed that process or not enjoyed the process or whatever, it's in the news, it's open. This is the penalty and the fee, including being kicked off, that you're going to have to pay in restitution to the organization because of said incident, right? If it's a DUI or DWI, that has a level of penalization associated with it as well. So you're going to have a framework within that body stating that if you do X, Y, and Z, and ABC, these consequences will be set forth accordingly. And
I think it's to the discretion, because now when you sign
Correct.
that contract, when you come to a team, you're part of something bigger than you. Baseball's bigger than you. If you're a player, it's never gonna not be bigger than you. So these guys get this complex that I am the organization, and it's a big mistake. And the organizations at times feed into that ego, that egotistical thing. Now you go around the town and their banners everywhere, their faces now, their jerseys are in the stores. They're like, oh my gosh, they have bobbleheads that night given away with their face on it. Like they do these things. They glorify these people and they put them in these positions and they raise them up and up and up. I'm not saying that people can't make mistakes, but there should be a hard line, and with some discretion to the organizations. They should have the choice. It's like, it's your house. I'm going to decide what landscape I'm going to have. People are not going to tell me what to do and what I can and can't do. Like, You own your business. These people, they're billionaires. They own these big, large hubs, and they put a lot of time, sweat, tears. Sometimes their families are owning it. All the other workers, everybody, it's not one person. You're a part of something bigger than yourself. And you need to respect the parking lot attendant. You need to respect the people holding the door for you, cleaning your uniforms. There's so many pieces and parts and people that go into the recipe of a pro sport and of this athlete being successful. And
Correct.
when that athlete puts himself in a position that's above other people and he's constantly doing it, and then he goes out in public or harms somebody or does something, the discretion should go right to the organization, because they're the ones writing the checks. They're the ones that made the decision to have the guy come there in the first place, or the female come there in the first place. And truthfully, they should have the discretion. There should be a contract in that says, if you do this, 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 and this, and this, we have the option to let you go. When you sign down there, that there is no argument.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And if what I did is listed in there and I did it, I take the chance. I'm at their mercy. And if I show remorse, if I'm like, I'll do anything, find me, I'm going to go out and make a public statement of apology. I'm going to own my stuff. I'm going to be accountable. I'm going to be human, and I'm going to go out and say, I fell down. I'm getting up. Kids, don't do what I do. Dumbest thing
Absolutely.
I've ever done. I'm going to do some work, and I'm going to earn your respect back and your trust and this organization. I apologize deeply. If I have an athlete that's like that, that's different, because that's like fall down, get up. That's break down, break through, and they're showing an example of humility. But when you have, most of these athletes don't do that. So they come out and it's the woe is me, and everybody's making an excuse, or nobody is. And they're like, why are they able to get back on the field? I don't get it. What message does that send? So I don't know. I mean, I'm a mother. I have young boys, athletes. One is in college playing baseball. And, I constantly tell them, and my athletes I work with now, I said, do you know the parking attendant's name? Do you ever bring them a coffee? Like, how do you treat people? Because guess what? Our averages and our stats are really great. You can be great for that, but you're not really great until you have people talking about how you treated them. How they go home, they're like, you wouldn't believe it. So-and-so stopped, rolled his window down. He brought me a coffee. Like, I love this guy. And they're never going to care whether you're successful or you fail. The influence, the way you can touch someone and influence somebody because of the way they look at you, or the way they see you, or how glorified you become, or your celebrity status, based on what you fell in love with doing as a child. Not one person is exempt of the fact that we all started somewhere. We all looked up and saw people and things bigger than us. And these people need to remember, you're not going to be bigger than where you're going and what you're doing. Even Tom Brady, he's amazing. You look at some of these greats, and when you actually talk to them, they don't act like that. Michael Jordan doesn't act like that. So humble, like, he's one of the greatest. Every one of them has failed. Michael Jordan didn't make his high school team. Like, you know what I mean? These people know real adversity. They know real pain.
Absolutely.
And when you're an athlete in these bubbles and you fail, it hurts. It burns. When you come up empty-handed on something, and when you go out and make a mistake like that, if you don't have humility and you don't have the human thing that people can relate to you, they're going to hate you. And I'm not saying you can't make mistakes as an athlete just because you're on a big stage. You can. We all are going to. None of us are perfect.
No.
But how we choose to handle it and react, that's what really defines our character. Who are you on your down days? Who are you when you fall down? And you know what? Violence, tough times in life, adversity, it doesn't discriminate, no matter what's in your wallet. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, at the end of the day,
the
no, and you raise tons of valid points. There has to be two things: transparency from the athlete to the people that were hurt based on what they know. Apologies to the organization, full transparency, full disclosure. We are who we say we are.
Yep.
We really
then
are.
We'll love you. We'll love you for your mistakes. We'll be like,
exactly.
You know what? Terrible what he did.
He owned it.
But, it's like Michael Vick when he was, doing all that stuff to the animals. People were going nuts. And then after, you're like, that's unforgivable. That is disgusting. It's unforgivable. No way, no how. That might not be someone you 100% trust around your animals ever, but he did. He's like, I'm sorry. That's awful. You're right. It is awful. Giving money, showing some remorse, regardless of what he, in his own skin, what he really feels and thinks, or what, turns the guy on or off. I don't know, but he came out publicly. He apologized. He's tried to do things. There's still people that hate his guts. That's their right. It's disgusting what he did, but he has made efforts to come out and be sorry. Mike
A lot of
Tyson,
effort.
perfect example. Look at him. He's fallen down a billion times in his life. You listen to an interview any time in the last few years of that guy, he drops gold. He has brilliant things to say. He's actually so smart. He was treated like he was stupid all his life. So he went and did stupid things. He acted out. He had a lot of rage. He had unresolved anger that he dealt with. The guy,
Right.
when he's calm and he's actually had help, he didn't do that by himself. He had support. He had people to work it out with him, and the guy, you love him now. And you're like, that guy bit in somebody's ear off. And that guy beat his wives and did a lot of terrible stuff. But you meet him now, you hear him now, you laugh, he's funny, and you love the guy. And people can forgive. We can also be resilient in our emotion or our view, our perspective of people. So,
Correct.
people we got to give grace, but at the same time, when someone's not sorry, when someone comes out and mocks the person they hurt or
Correct.
does disgusting things and then gets their way, I find that repulsive. It's unforgivable. To me, I'm like, go away. Don't want to see your face. Don't care.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there.
Again, it's about accountability. Accountability
Mhm,
is going to be huge, and whoever you give that message to, whoever is there to hear it, and it doesn't matter if it's the janitor or if it's a custodian. It doesn't matter if it's the parking lot attendant. You have to be transparent, honest with yourself first. Once that's created, then you can be transparent with other people. But you can't be transparent unless you're just willing to sit there and take it on the chin. Kobe Bryant did the very same thing. He went
mhm,
out in a public media with his wife and his one child at the time. I believe she was either pregnant or soon to be pregnant with the second.
mhm,
And the late Kobe Bryant was just out there. So you know what? I was wrong. I did this. I knew that I was wrong, but I did it anyway. I asked for the forgiveness of the Los Angeles Lakers and my wife, my children, and I was completely floored. I thought to myself, wow, that's
mhm,
full undisclosed transparency. Magic Johnson did the very same thing when he found out that he had AIDS. He sat out
mhm,
there and he gave a complete media pitch as to why not to hate him and how he contracted it and what steps he's doing to take care of himself, to better
mhm.
himself. Clearly not playing in the NBA from that moment forward, but still considered one of the greatest of all time, and now
100%.
probably quite greater because of his transparency, because he held himself accountable, but
There's so
because
many stories like that. There's so many stories. And it's funny, like when you just mentioned that about a Kobe, like I don't know that, that ever even crossed my mind again when I saw his face. You smile, your heart gets warm. Like there's good feelings and association, because I always tell players too, like you make an error, get up, make the good throw, because people aren't going to remember, the error when you get the guy out, and you don't give up in those moments, and you push through, and you react in a positive manner to something negative. Human beings, we do let go, we forgive, we forget, we move on, when there's all these positive things stacked on top of a negative like that. And we all have a purpose, and we're here to serve it. Nobody's going to do it perfect. I think it's progress over perfection a lot of time. And if we can make
I like
1%
that.
progress a day, it adds up. And sometimes these things for athletes are very overwhelming, and I tell them, take life, take your sport one pitch at a time, one minute at a time on the court, one
Yeah.
play at a time on the field.
Yes.
And and you don't have to be aggressive. You are aggressive when you come in organized, and you have a game plan, and you understand what you do control. And that goes for life too. Sports are one
Right.
of the most beautiful platforms to parallel life. And it does matter in jiu-jitsu. It matters who we choose as our training partners, and in life it matters who we surround ourselves with, because you can get hurt, or you can be hurt, or even somebody being jealous of you can hurt you. Things can hold you back. And
Right.
it takes a lot of courage to live life in your purpose, and in the best ways you can at all times. And it's just not realistic that these athletes or human beings in general are not going to fall down at some point. And it's all about how you get up. I believe that's what defines you. And when these athletes realize that, actually they're happier people when they can be humble, when they can be transparent, when they understand that vulnerability becomes a superpower in those times rather than hiding everything, resisting everything, denying
Absolutely.
everything. So it's just about, for the people outside watching sports who love sports, the fans, remember those athletes are just people too. They're just like you.
Yeah.
They've had the same problems and dark place. They have the same dark places you have. They may have more money. It still doesn't excuse the humanness and the imperfections that they do have. And they're also trying to work it out, So love your sports, love your athletes, and realize that they're humans. Don't put too high of expectations. Look at their standards, look at the kind of people they are, and decide, is that still my favorite athlete? So you don't get your heart broken when they do fall down or they
Yeah.
do make these
Exactly.
mistakes. We all have had it. We've all seen an athlete be a complete jerk that you're like, oh my God, I love this athlete. And then you're like, ew, I had that poster hanging above my bed and that guy just acted out like this. Like, ew, like I didn't think he could be like that. There's times
Yeah.
where you want to meet so and so. I'm like, no, I like him too much. I don't want to meet him unless he's an
Oh, good.
amazing human being. I don't want to
Yeah.
meet him, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, they're just people. They're just hot messes like the rest of us. Trying
Oh
to
yeah,
work it
for
out. Works
sure.
in progress. So
Everywhere, every day. We need to put the best version of ourselves, and I think that could be something. And I know it's heard frequently, maybe not as applicable as I believe it should be to everyone, but we need to be a better version of ourselves every day in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter what it is.
1%.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 1% at a time, and just build up
And
back to that 100.
it's doable, and there's so many ways. I spend my day sharing many hundreds of ways to do it, and then helping people organize their stuff and then go out into their lane of performance of whatever that is, and really maximize. So that personal and professional maximization, there's tons of ways to do it, but remember, the brain believes what you tell it. So when there's that positive type of stuff, and you're in the self affirmation and the breaths and calming down, and there's so many different ways to go out and really like push ourselves. But being uncomfortable is a good one. Learning to be comfortably uncomfortable and getting out of our comfort zones is really great. We build self-worth. We grow our confidence in that space and time. And also people remembering that, like, your results aren't where your confidence can live. So the amount of money you have, what you've just accomplished, your batting average, how many, whatever you scored that night, because the very next day it can be different. So if my confidence lives in my preparation, in my ability, in my process, in my intentions, in my ability to align my actions, then I'm always going to have a little like reserve confidence when all goes, to heck. So, there's a lot of ways to set up perspectives to give yourself the grace and the best possible opportunity to
Yeah.
being yourself and maximizing.
Sure. Absolutely. I could not have said it any better myself. And of course, joined by the wonderful, informative Danielle Martin. You can always go to truemindsets.com,
Hmm.
explore her site. It's filled with just a wealth of knowledge that's there. You could spend probably an entire day and still not get through the entire site because there's so many different aspects. TrueMindsets.com. Uh, go check it out. I encourage you to do that. And I had found you on Twitter. So everybody can go and find her on Twitter as well. I think
Hey,
I
you can
looked it up.
message me there. You can message me on Twitter. You can message me at True Mindsets on Instagram. I just launched my site and I'm launching it like to kids. So I kind of started with the high school travel ball, baseball stuff. My main work is working with big league athletes. And then I started getting this demand for kind of that younger generation coming in from agents with prospective kids and talent. And I kept getting asked, do you have anything online? And I never really worked like that. So I went and I filmed about 80 sessions of just different, basically issues I wrote down, and I filmed sessions answering those questions, explaining how to navigate. And I'm going to launch April 1st. So if you're a coach, message me. I have a coach's link for you to test drive the subscriptive site. if you're somebody with a kid in sports that wants to, be a pro athlete or wants to get to that next level in college, it's a great subscription. It's $29 a month. And if you're a pro athlete or you're anybody else, you can check out the site, test drive the site, but you can also contact me on Twitter. I always respond. And also the Instagram's a great place too. So I really appreciate you having me, Rudy. You have a great show. You always have a great message. And anytime I can come on and be of service and to any of you, that's what I'm here to do. That is my purpose. And I never thought I'd be doing this. I was an athlete myself, but here I am, and I'm very humbled. I'm always learning from every single person I get to listen to or do podcasts like this. I learn something every time. I'm so humbled and really honored to be here. So I really appreciate you.
No, thank you. It's always good to get a different mindset. Always about the evolutionary process of what I'm learning and how I learn it and the ways that I can learn it and who I can learn it from. Always a benefit to what I do. I don't have a degree because I'm a schmuck, or I don't pay attention or I don't follow instructions. It's a matter of taking what is applicable to you as an individual, regardless of who you are watching, whoever you are listening, because it's really about you and how you handle who you are to be a better version of who you are daily. So
yeah,
I thank you so much, Danielle. I really do. You're fabulous. I'm going to put this on the RudeDogShow.com. Make sure you throw her a follow on Instagram. Just follow her. Don't show up at her house. Just follow her on social. That's the easiest way to go about getting the message. And of course, go to TrueMindsets.com, which is clearly a site worth checking out. So thank you again. Certainly appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. A little bit longer than normal, but hey, you know what? Good information sometimes lasts longer. And of course, the message and the messenger should not be shot for it. So this is Rudy Reyes of TheRudeDogShow.com. Of course, I got to mention my partners one last time because they're absolutely fabulous. Go to trophycase.app. You're going to find them. You have to build your site, build it with your huddle, build it with your information, build it with your dynamics. Show who you really are, because teams, as me and Danielle have clearly refined it, that people need to see the real version of you and who you are. So remember, go to trophycase.app. Make sure that you check out that application. Is going to be great for you. And of course, go to SaturdaysCount.com. And make sure you download a shirt. I know March Madness is going on right now. I'm going to go get a part of some of this madness in a minute. But thanks for tuning in. I certainly appreciate it. Everybody have a great evening, and I will see everyone on Monday. Thanks again for tuning in.